I don't believe that there are a lot of universal truths in the world. There are some, but there's not a lot. But one of them is this. If you're going to get in business and you want to grow a business, you are going to have failures, you're going to have hard times, and you're going to have things not work out the way that you want them to. And I have gone through so many different times of being in debt, failed launches, things not working out, bad employees, having to fire employees, employees talking behind my back, spreading rumors. There's just like even people like me, trying to do like cancel me, like not to the extreme, but many versions of that. There's just been so many different things that I've had to go through in business. Again, like things not working out, bills not being paid, just failure after failure, like working for 2 years and never making a sale. There's just so much that I've had to go through. And and the thing is as I grow in business, those failures and those things get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I've been able to navigate them fairly well. It's taken a lot of times and lessons and learnings that I've had to go through to get to a place to be able to navigate them very powerfully. But over the last 6 months, the journey has been tough, the worst launch that we've ever had. We've had to pull ourselves out of it. We've reinvented the entire business model. We had to change our messaging around. And we, at the end of the 6 months, had our best launch we've ever done. We had a brand new business model. And I had to spend over $40,000 in coaching. There's a lot of stuff that had to happen. And you can listen to the episode of that whole journey. We did that an episode or two ago, and you can listen to that. But I asked our students what they wanted to hear. And this was the topic that one of them had mentioned. And so what I wanted to do is break down the 4 things that I go through anytime we go through a really hard time. The 4 things that allow me to operate powerfully, and the 4 things that I embrace that when I go through a really hard time doesn't put any stress on me or very little. It doesn't let me feel sorry for myself. It doesn't allow me to emotionally get disrupted when I go through these really hard times. And again, this is through 8 years of business, huge failures, tough times, both my personal life and in business life. And I'm going to spill the beans on the 4 things that I've had to learn that can allow you to build more resilience, allow you to be emotionally and mentally tougher. And it's the 4 things that I don't care what happens in my life will pull me through every single time. So if that sounds interesting to you, well, keep on listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Super excited to have you guys here. And I'm really excited for this episode. It feels like I've been talking about nothing but messaging, and I get into these little like routines of just talking about messaging all the time because I love it and communication and marketing. But you know, really the reason why I started this podcast in the first place and called it the New Generation Entrepreneur wasn't to talk about messaging. It just happened to kind of go down that path and be something that I really liked and enjoyed and was good at and was one of those things that people liked listening to. Although I do believe that messaging and communication is the foundation of everything. And if we are going to teach entrepreneurship to the young ones, to the little ones, to the kids, to the next generation, proper messaging and communication is absolutely vital. But I also believe, or one of the reasons why I started the podcast was to talk about stuff beyond messaging and beyond communication. So this episode is going to be one of those episodes where I'm diving back into other topics. And this one is going to be around the topic of resilience and getting through really hard times and what that perspective looks like and what are some of the things that are going to hold you back from moving forward through really hard times, and all of that good stuff. So more of like a personal development sort of episode, I guess. And again, that's what I love talking about, because I think these things, yes, are going to be great for you as an entrepreneur, but also, you know, my belief is that when you become a great entrepreneur, when you become more resilient, when you become tougher, when you become a better entrepreneur, that is an example that you start to set for your kids and the next generation. And if we do have any kids listening, this would be a great episode for you to have, because this is the stuff I'm going to cover today is all perspectives that I wish I would have had when I first got started with entrepreneurship, because I fell into a lot of traps like victimhood and not thinking I needed any help, and arrogance and thinking I knew everything, and all of that stuff. So this episode is inspired because of what we've been through over the last 6 months. And so I actually reached out to our NGM Plus students and I was like, hey, are there any topics that you feel like would be good, like helpful, and something I haven't talked about in a while that you want me to dive a little bit deeper on? And this is one of the topics. So let's dig into it. So as you likely know, if you're a listener of the podcast, 6 months ago, we had the worst performing launch that we've had in like 5 years. And then we changed and shifted and made a huge difference in what we did and how we did it, and our messaging and even our offers. We changed a lot over the last 6 months. And then that led us to having our best performing launch that we've that we have ever had in the history of the company. So it wasn't the highest revenue launch because we had about 10,000 leads. Our highest revenue launch was we had 25,000 leads. But this was the best performing in the form of conversion rates, earnings per lead, all of that stuff, engagement and everything. And so we went through a lot of different shifts over the last 6 months. Now, I broke down what all of those shifts were, and what we changed and what we learned in an episode. And we released that episode a couple weeks ago. So you can always look back on the podcast and see if you can go through that, listen to that episode. It was pretty awesome. I think we ended up at 1.14 million, or maybe even now close to 1.2 or somewhere in that range. But again, it wasn't always, and it wasn't an easy journey over the last 6 months to get that point. So just a mini recap. Back in September was our first launch since Taylor had left. And Taylor was our integrator, and she basically was with me from day one of starting the Video 4X Effect. Hired her when I was $40,000 in debt. We launched the Video 4X Effect, 3 different levels, a course, a service, and a coaching program all at the same time. And her and I just worked our tails off, just morning till night. It was really hard. It was a really, really tough time. And in another episode, I talked about how at the same time as going through some issues with my wife and postpartum depression, we didn't realize what it was. And I was gone all the time. And it was just a really, really tough time. And I broke down everything that happened then in an episode with my wife that you can look back on in the podcast as well. And it was just really, really hard. But the point is Taylor was with us from day one. She was with me by my side in the trenches, just her and I. And then we slowly started to build out a team and bring on more people. And we grew from what was $40,000 in debt to $1 million business in 9 months to now a multi-million-dollar business. And she was with us for about 4.5 years. And so she ended up leaving, I think it was April or May or something of 2022, I believe. Yeah. And then we went into a launch in 2020, August or September of 2022. And it's our worst performing one. And, it was hard on the team, especially Brittany, because Brittany was the launch manager. But the thing is, and she was managing launch, but Brittany executed it flawlessly. This wasn't a result of bad execution. She was phenomenal. What it was on my end as the CEO, as a person doing it, it was there was laziness, there was arrogance. Maybe not so much arrogance anymore, but it was more of oh, we're just going to do a ton of money. It's gonna be super easy. But there's not a focus of service on the students. And I hadn't changed anything in a couple years. And that was one of the lessons I shared in that episode, is when I don't change anything, it's stale energy. There's no growth. And so there's usually a result of that in our advertising and our marketing and in our sales. And so we still did 350,000 on that launch, which is great. But, for the business and where we're at, it just wasn't enough to get us and pay the bills for the next 6 months, which is what our launch model sort of looked like. So it was really hard because we changed a lot of things right after that. So basically what happened was, I was in the spot and going I don't know what to do. And so I had to get back into the business. And to be honest with you, I'd been intentionally kind of lazy with the business because I just had worked so hard for 8 years. I'm the business runs great. There's not really much to do. Taylor's running the show. And so I was working maybe 10, 15 hours a week, and I was just enjoying my life, And I had to get my butt back into gear. And so I had to start reinventing and looking at what needs to shift and what needs to change. So we started changing offers. We started changing business models. We invested $40,000 in hiring mentors to help us with the direction we wanted to go. We laid out a plan over the next 6 months and started to execute on it. And there's a lot of things that come up because there's always the, what if this doesn't work? You just spent all this money that you don't like, would probably have been good to just hold on to and save in case things get worse. But that's the funny thing about money is if I would have held on to it, if I would have just tried to save it because I thought, well, I need it in case of, things get worse. Well, I wouldn't have been able to make things better because I needed to use that $40,000 to get the help to make this a lot quicker. I brought on consultants and I brought on coaches and I brought on mentors, which sped up the whole process of changing everything. If I tried to figure it out on my own, then nothing would have happened. It would have been a lot longer and harder road because there's a lot more guess and check. And so when we spent that money, and I think that's one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs don't get or understand is like our course is $3,000. And I know that's a lot. But the thing is if you know that it can solve the problem, a lot of people get stuck in, well, I need to save that $3,000 so that I can do X, Y, and Z, or that I have the money or whatever. And they don't realize no, but when you invest that $3,000, it speeds up the process. Otherwise, you're going to take way longer, which is actually more expensive. And so that's what I realized was look, this is not a time for me to get into panic and worry and start saving money in order to try to get us through this. I'm I need to spend money in order to pull us out of this. And again, I had to make that same decision when I hired Taylor, when we started hiring employees, when we started to do all the things that we needed to do, spend sometimes $250,000 on ads, I have to spend money in order to make more, to speed up, to learn, to, not wait around. And that's what I did for the first 5 years of business is just save money, didn't spend, didn't get mentors. And it was just such a long, boring, relentless road of trial and error. And until I finally got to the point where I'm I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. I need to let's speed it up, man. That's when things started to really take off. So going into this period, yes, it was scary. Yes, there was a lot of unknowns. I didn't know what I was going to do or I was going to pull myself out of it. And, there's a lot of things that I had going for me. The business obviously had a pretty decent and still does a pretty decent savings account for those rainy days. Luckily, we never had to tap into that. And then I have my own personal savings and my own personal investment accounts and retirement accounts and stuff like that I was okay, when you add everything up, we're sitting very fine. It's okay. Everything's going to be okay. You have some time to learn and to whatever. And let's speed this up. So in most cases in the past, I didn't have that. When I was $40,000 in debt, I didn't have a savings account. I was negative money. So I was so grateful just to have that sort of luxury of knowing, okay, there is this little buffer that I do have financially. It's a pretty decent sized buffer financially in case I needed to tap into it. I didn't want to. I don't want to go backwards, but I had it there in case we needed to. Okay. So even then, there's still a lot of unknowns. What if I'm not able to make payroll? Or what if bills start going the opposite way? Or what if whatever, things start happening? What if it doesn't get fixed? You get into all these fears and it could be a spiral downhill real quick if you're not careful. So I'm going to go through 4 different things that I do every single time I go through a hard time that has led me to operate these very difficult times very powerfully. And to be honest with you, over the last 8 years, I've been able to pull myself out of every single quote unquote hard, difficult, downward time, every single time. And I've been able to learn certain principles that have helped me do that every single time. And this is both true in my personal life and business life. Okay. So the number one thing, the first thing that I tapped into or always go to is this idea that everything will be okay. And this is what I hear from one of my mentors, Don Javier. And this is something he's, heard from his Don Juan, who is fairly well known. A lot of books are written around Don Juan's teachings, and Carlos Castaneda books are based off of a lot of Don Javier's life and Don Juan's teachings as well. So if you read those books, then you probably have heard this before, or if you haven't, there's such great books to start reading. introducing yourself into a lot of this old ancient wisdom. But the number one thing that I always go to is everything will always be okay. And everything is always okay. And I've seen evidence of this too many times to be true. I look back and I look at where I am today. And where I am today is, self-made millionaire. I have, I'm not going to go through all the things that I have, but I'm just going to say I have a pretty good life. I can kind of have a lot of freedom financially and time-wise. I can spend a lot of time with my kids. I don't really have to worry about like going out to eat or what that's going to do. Just simple things. I can kind of go on vacation wherever I want. Like I wouldn't say I'm living an extravagant life, living in a mansion with like 10 Lambos and all of that stuff, but I have a very rich life in the form of freedom. I have a very rich life in the form of relationships. I have a very rich life in the form of like being present and spending time with my kids and creating memories that I'll have for the rest of my life. I have a lot of richness in my life, and obviously I financially do really well as well. And I look back at I look at where my current circumstance is. I look at what my life is like now, and I look at where I am right now, and I go like, I'm good. I'm pretty happy. Like I have pretty much everything that I need and want. And I always look back and I go, where were the hard times? Where were the most difficult times? Where were the times that I thought that I was never going to get through this thing? And then I look at where I am today and I'm like, I went through it totally fine. Everything ended up being okay. And so what I do is when I'm going through a hard time now, I look at my life and go like, look, you went through all these other hard times and this is where you ended up. And this is a pretty good place to end up. Whatever you're going through now, no matter how emotionally difficult, financially difficult, how tired you are, it's always temporary. Nothing lasts forever. None of the hard times that you've gone through lasted forever. Some of them may have lasted a long time. Some of them may have lasted 6 months, a month, but it's always 100% temporary. So I remember telling myself in September, when you're going through this period that you're going through right now is a temporary circumstance. It is a temporary reality, but it is a temporary reality that is going to propel you to where you're going to go next. And I always remember that. I always look back at where I am today. I have a roof over my head. I have family. I have food. I'm totally fine. Everything always ended up being okay. And I believe that if you never give up on your business, you will always end up where you want, as long as you don't quit. What happens for most people is when they go through these temporary bad times, hard times, they end up giving up and quitting and never get to the other side. And even that's okay, because you end up in another spot where things are always going to be okay. And so that's what I always have thought is like, and really embraced and lived as if it was my reality, is everything is always going to be okay. What you're going through right now is a temporary thing. And even the good times are going to be temporary because you're going to run into another bad time. And so it's this flip-flop of good, bad, good, bad. But it doesn't have to be emotionally good or emotionally bad. You get to choose what you want to feel and experience in those moments. So when you start to realize, you know what, everything's gonna be okay, this is temporary, it actually starts to take a relief off of you. You start to feel like less of that gut-wrenching feeling. You feel a little bit less of everything on your shoulders. And when you realize everything's gonna be okay, nothing has to be the way that you want it to be. Nothing has to get done when you want it to get done. And everything always gonna be okay. Like even when it comes up to deadlines and I'm stressed and all of this stuff, I'm like, you know what, if I don't hit this deadline, it'll be okay. We'll adjust, we'll move. And it just takes so much pressure off, which allows you to be that better, bigger person, the person that will pull you out of those spots. And so for me, I've always looked at like, look, if I have at least 5 of these things going on in my life, then everything is always going to be okay. And I would say everyone listening to this podcast, I'm going to give you a list of like 10 things. Most of us have at least 5 of these at all times, which is, do you have food? Like, meaning, are you not going hungry every single day? Do you have family and friends who love you or like hanging out with? Can you walk outside of your door and feel safe walking through your neighborhood? Do you have clothes on your back? Do you have warmth at night? Do you have warm water when you take showers or baths? Do you have good health? Do you have a doctor? And if you don't have good health, is there a doctor readily available that you can go to and see? Do you have some sort of transportation, whether that's a car or even a bicycle, to get from place so you don't have to walk? And do you have a place to live? Do you have a nice, warm place to live, even if it's a couch in somebody's house? If you have at least 5 of those things going on in your life, then you are doing better than 99% of the world. You really, really are. And so for me, going through these hard times, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, it's going to be difficult. I'm going to have to put in some hours. I'm going to have to try to figure things out. Things could happen to the business, but even if that got to the point where I'm like, even if the business goes down, I don't really care because I can always rebuild back. Like it took me, you can say 8 years to get to the point of where we're at now. But if I was to redo it again, it wouldn't take me 8 years. It would take me maybe a year. And yeah, I'm gonna have to go through some temporary, uncomfortable conversations with the team. Maybe you let people go. Like I'm going to have to maybe start over from ground zero, put in more hours, but I can easily get back to where I need to be and everything will always be okay. Everything is always okay. And so that's what I held and maintained through everything is that no matter what I've gone through my life, I've ended up right here, and right here is good and better than 99% of the world. Even if I didn't have half the things on that list, I'm still doing better than most people and everything ends up being okay because you pull yourself out of it always. And maybe it takes you down a different path than what you wanted to go or whatever it may be, but everything always ends up being okay. And in that process, you may not always get what you want. You may go through a really temporary bad spot in business, which let's just say that had happened for me. I had a really bad temporary spot in business and I did have to close up shop and go do something. I could very easily go get a job. It's not what I would have wanted, but getting a job would have still allowed me to keep my house and get the food on the table and, put clothes on my kids' backs and all of that stuff. And that's the other thing too, is when you start to realize that you're going to be okay, you become more okay accepting that you won't get what you want right now as well. And here's what I mean is I want to have that, let's just say $5 million a year business. And I start to realize, okay, I'm going through a really hard time. Business is going down. It's a little bit bad. The launch didn't do very well. What starts to happen is you start to be okay with not having what you want right now, which means that I was okay in that moment of not having that $5 million a year business. And I was also okay if I had to go get a job. That would have totally been okay with that. I was okay accepting and having the thing or not having the thing that I wanted right now in this moment. And I think that's one of the things we get so attached to what we want and what we think we should have. And we get trapped into what we think we should have or what we think we're supposed to have, or we get so trapped in our desires, or we get so trapped in our visions or what we thought we were going to have. And what starts to happen is when things get bad and you just accept, I'm freaking good no matter what happens. You start to lose all this attachment. You start to be unattached to what you thought you were going to have, and you just be okay not having what you thought you were going to have. And that doesn't mean you will never have it. It just means it's not going to happen right now, and you become okay with it. So when you start to realize everything's going to be okay, you're going to be okay, you're going to get through these hard times, you actually start to lose a lot of these attachments, which actually makes you feel a lot better. And that's my next thing is number 2 is one of the reasons why when you go through these difficult times or you're not being very resilient or whatever, it's because you're too attached to things. You're too attached to what you have. You're too attached to what was. You're too attached to even the money that you have in your bank account. And that's one of the things with me is we spent $40,000 in a time where the logical mind was telling me, Brandon, keep that $40,000. You're going to need it. It's going to you shouldn't be seeing the bank account go down right now. That's what the logical mind was saying, but I was unattached to money. I was unattached to the business. I was unattached to so many things. And so when I became unattached to all of those things, it allowed me to be who I needed to be in order to pull myself out of those spots. So when I became unattached to the money, guess what? I didn't care if I lost the money. Or let's say I cared, but I didn't care. I wasn't emotionally in distress or freaking out because the money was going down. I was unattached. Okay, if I lose it, I lose it. I don't want to. I'm not going to. My intention is not to do that. But at the same time, if that happens, then I'm good with it. I'm okay with it. And what that allows you to do is get rid of the fear, get rid of the weight off your shoulders, get rid of that feeling in the pit of your stomach, and it allows you to operate out of power. It allows you to be who you need to be, to do what you need to do, to take the actions you know you need to take in order to get the results that you want. So for me, I became unattached to the outcome that I wanted. And plus, it was in the past. I wanted to, on that launch where we did 450,000 or 350,000, I wanted to do like 6 to 7 to 8. But I became unattached to that outcome. You know, the results were done. I became unattached. Plus, there's no point. It's already done. It's in the past. Let's move on. Let's be in the present and like, let's focus on the future. So I became unattached to that. And I also became unattached to what it meant. And I think that's another thing that holds people back too, is like, I become too attached to what it means if your business goes down. What do you look like in front of other people? How will you be judged? And I became unattached to that. You know, I have a lot of friends that are really successful. I built a business kind of on success, right? Like you guys can see how successful we are and where I came from. It was like basically broke, living with my in-laws to what we have now. And so I'm like this, you know, hopefully it's an inspiring story. And then there's always like, well, if this business goes down, what does that mean to other people? What are they going to think of you? How are they going to judge you? What are your friends going to think? What is your family going to think? And I became unattached to all that as well. Because if we become too attached to it and we care too much about what it means or what we think it means or how we think people are going to handle it or what we think they're going to think of us, that also starts to affect how you show up inside the business. And basically what you're doing is you're letting the external world control you, dictate you. You're letting the external world control the actions that you take when you're trying to pull yourself out of a tough spot. And that never is going to lead you to, again, who you need to be or to the best decision. And so for me, I had to lose attachment to the outcome. I had to lose attachment to what people thought. I had to lose attachment to the money. I had to lose the attachment to even like losing the house or whatever. I'm like, we're always going to be okay. Everything's always going to be okay. So you have to lose a lot of this attachment. And so what I've recognized over the years is the best way to see where your attachments are and to recognize where your attachments are is to look where you are being disrupted emotionally the most. Where are you getting taxed emotionally the most? And usually I'm a firm believer that most of our emotional distress is based off some sort of attachment. Now, why the attachment is there is a whole different story. That could be some childhood trauma, past traumas, or you've been indoctrinated in some sort of belief, or you've been indoctrinated into whatever through society. Society's told you this is what you should have, or whatever it may be. Like there's a lot of reasons why the attachments are there. But in most cases, the reason why people have emotional distress is because there's some sort of attachment going on, attachment of what others might think or whatever it may be. And those attachments are usually there for a lot of different reasons, but you have to start going through and releasing a lot of these attachments. And the best thing for me was really, truly understanding to the core of my being that everything will always be okay. And knowing that and living and acting and making decisions as if that is the case. And so that's what I did. But then I went into number 3. And number 3, honestly, I think is the most important one. It is one that a lot of people can't get to or can't recognize. And honestly, I don't think it's how we are wired as humans to get to on a natural basis. And number 3 is gratitude. Gratitude for what you're going through. Gratitude is what held me and kept me up high, kept the spirits up high through all of this. I had gratitude for my team, for sticking with me, for trusting in us, for trusting in me, believing in me, for helping me see the things that I couldn't see. Like Matt was huge for me over the last 6 months because he was like, hey, I think we need mentors, and really pushed for it. And he was like, and honestly, I don't know if I would have hired the mentors had Matt not pushed me into it. And because of him, I was, grateful for him and the team. And I'm pretty honest with my team. Like maybe I didn't express how fearful I was, in the beginning and how worried I was in the beginning. And I didn't tell them what I had to pull myself out of. But they knew the launch didn't do well. They knew that I had concerns and they could see me cutting back on expenses and things like that. And so they knew, and, they stuck with me through it all. And I'm very grateful for that. But the one thing that I knew and the one thing that I was grateful for the most was for the failed launch. I was grateful for the thing that put me in this situation. I was honestly grateful for being put in that situation. And here's the reason why. There has never been a quote unquote bad time in my life that has not helped me down the road. And what I mean by this is every single quote unquote bad time, hard time, emotionally distressful time, quote unquote unwanted time that I've had in my life or experience that I've had in my life has always given me exactly what I needed and forged me into being the person I need to be to have what I want in this life. There has never been a time in my life or an experience in my life where I haven't learned something or grown to be someone that I'm proud of. I can't look back and think of one moment where I wish I could just erase that. I wish that never happened. I am grateful for all of it. And when you learn to be grateful for those times, when you go through more hard times and more hard times and more hard times, you start to see who you become on the other side. And you can't help but to be grateful for all of it. I'm grateful for the good times, yes, but that is easy. It is easy to be grateful for the good times. But when you can finally get yourself to a place where you are grateful for the hard times, you become unstoppable. Nothing can get in your way. Why? Because when you go through those difficult times, those hard times, those down moments, and you live in gratitude for them, you can't help but to be the person you need to be that's going to pull yourself out of it. Most people don't understand this. Most people don't understand the hard times are the biggest blessings that you will ever get in your entire life. And this is why when you come to really hard times, or like a really tough decision, you make them a lot quicker because you don't care if it turns out the way you want it or the way you don't want it. Because if it turns out the way you want it, great, got what you wanted. But if it turns out to be the way you didn't want, great, you got a great lesson that's going to forge you to being even better than you are now. If you choose to learn that lesson. Sometimes we have to go through things a couple times, and I've had to do that a lot. There have been a lot of things that I've had to go through multiple times because I didn't learn the lesson. And that's another thing too, is if you go through a hard time, you don't actually learn the lesson and integrate it into your life, guess what? You're going to go through it again until you actually learn the lesson. But when you do, and you become a better, stronger person because of it, you learn to be incredibly grateful for those moments. And if you can't be grateful, and look, I will be the first to admit there are some moments that you're going to go through that are incredibly difficult, emotionally draining, that you just can't pull yourself out of. And I went through that a couple years ago, where my wife and I talked about it on the podcast. There was a really tough time we went through in our marriage where we were both growing so much. And a lot of our communication problems had not been fixed from the years prior. And it led to a really pivotal moment where it was like, man, I was like scared for my marriage and family life and all of that. And I was so grateful for it, now I'm grateful, very grateful for those moments because it led to a much deeper, loving, just whole relationship, which is now affecting my kids in a really positive way and all that stuff. I'm incredibly grateful. But there was like a 2-month period where I just couldn't get myself to a place of gratitude because it was so emotionally taxing. And it was like, there was a really big attachment there that I didn't see, like how attached I was to my wife and my kids and how our life was. And just like that got ripped apart. And that was really emotionally hard. The attachment got ripped apart. And that was really, really difficult to go through. And so I understand that there's going to be times that are really tough. And there's things that I hadn't had to go through that some of you guys will have to go through. So I don't want you to think that I'm not coming from a place of compassion with this. I've so much compassion for everything that everyone goes through. You know, there's certain things like a death of a spouse or even a child that I've never had to go through. So please don't take what I'm about to say as like, well, Brandon doesn't have any compassion for what I'm going through. It's what I'm saying is there are every moment that we're going through, there's going to be hard time, there's going to be anger, and there's going to be victimhood. And I say, feel those emotions. Let those emotions process. But we don't want to stay there forever. And there are people that stay there forever. And there are people that stay in anger and victimhood forever. And there needs to come a point and there needs to come a time where we pull ourselves out of that victimhood. We pull ourselves out of that anger and see gratitude in what that experience gave us. And again, I don't know your specific situation, but I do know this to be true for most people. You know, there's some people who do go through a death of a spouse or someone like that, which is extremely tough. And they use it to propel them to be something better, to help more people, to whatever. And they grow from that experience. And there's some people that don't. There's some people that just stay in sadness, anger, and victimhood for long periods of time, sometimes their whole life. And again, that's all a choice. I'm not saying one is right or the other. I'm just saying for me, I don't want to stay in that as long as, or I want to stay in that as least as I can. And so again, like when I went through that experience with my wife and all the growing that we had to do, it was really tough and I physically couldn't pull myself out. But after about 2 months of that, I made the choice of like, I don't want to be in this spot anymore. And I would just want to be grateful for whatever is to come of this. I want to be able to learn from it and grow from it. And I don't want to be sitting in anger and victimhood anymore. And I do believe that if you are going through really tough times and you are stuck in anger and victimhood, you will never learn the lessons that you need to learn from those things. And again, that's fine. That's a choice. But again, if you can learn to be grateful for those things, you start to learn and grow and you become the person that's going to pull you out of those things. So when I made that switch and I started to be grateful for that experience and those fights and those like disagreements and those things with my wife, and I started to be grateful for them, I actually started to see all the things that I wasn't seeing before. Oh, this is how you showed up, or this is how you should show up, or here's this, or this is that lesson. And I started to learn all of these lessons. And because I got out of victimhood and got into gratitude, I became a better communicator. I became a better husband. I became a better father. I became a better entrepreneur because I took those lessons and I brought them down to my team and became a better listener. And I became just a better leader. There was so much that I was just sitting there waiting for me to gain, that the second I started to have a focus of gratitude on everything, I was now able to see the lessons. I then became, and because I saw those lessons, I then became the person I needed to become to move myself out of those and to move myself out of those unwanted situations. And so what I started to realize is gratitude lets you see the lessons that pulls you out of those situations, but anger and victimhood keeps you stuck in the muck. It blinds you. You have too much mud on your eyes to be able to see, because you're down in the dumps. You're not able to see the lessons there. And the lessons are the things that are able to pull you out of it. Okay. Now this next one plays off of gratitude a little bit. This was something I heard from Don Javier not too long ago. And he did this writing, and it's really profound writing, but he said something along the lines of, when going through hard times and difficult times, you have to remember you asked for that. And I remember sitting there going like, asked for it? What is he talking about? I didn't ask for this hard time. I didn't ask for this failed launch. I didn't ask for like this fight with my wife or like, I didn't fight to learn these lessons. I didn't fight for, I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask for this fight. I didn't ask for that. And it's really painful. Why the hell would I ever ask for any of it? And as you read deeper into the writing, I started to realize, oh, this is what he meant. And it's one of these things where anytime we set a goal, we set an intention, we have a desire, I believe you can have all of it. You can have whatever the hell you want in this life. You want to be a millionaire? Great, you can be a millionaire. You want to have a big house? Great, you can have a big house. You want to be financially free? You can have whatever it is that you want in this planet, on this world, in this lifetime. You can have it. You can have it all. However, what you have to realize is that when you want something, you are not the person who can bring that into the physical right now. Otherwise, you'd already have it. If you want $1 million business, I'm sorry, you're not right now. You are not the person that can have $1 million business. You're just not. Otherwise, you would have already had it. So when I say I want a $5 million business, I'm not the person who can have a $5 million business. Not at this moment in time, in this present moment, I am not that person, because otherwise I would have already had it. So when you ask the universe, or you ask the God force, or the God, or whoever, whatever you believe, the higher power, or whatever it is, when you ask or you set your intention for that thing, it is delivered. It is delivered when you are ready and when you become the person who can have it. So if you're not going to become that person, you know what's going to happen? The universe, God, or whatever you believe, they're going to make you become that person. And they're going to put you through challenges. They're going to put you through hard times. They're going to give you little things where you have an opportunity to grow from or not. And so when you go through a really hard time, it's because you asked for it. You asked for this on the other side. And sometimes it may not even be a conscious thing. It may be like, this is what you signed up for before you came down here. This is what you wrote for your life, your plan, whatever. And you're not becoming that person that is in alignment with the plan that you wrote for yourself. So you know what? God, the universe, whoever, they're going to make you become that person. Why? Because you asked for it. You asked to have that life. You asked to have those goals. You asked to have that desire. You asked for that thing. So guess what's going to happen? It's not going to be handed to you on a silver platter. That's not the way it works. You need to grow into the person that can create the results that you want in life. And if you're not going to grow into that person, the universe will make you. So when you're going through those tough times, those challenges, guess what? You asked for it. You signed up for it. And when you're grateful for God or the universe or whatever to throw those onto your plate, it becomes so much easier to grow from those challenges. And guess what happens? If you don't learn from those challenges, they will repeat. They will always repeat, always. And that's why, and you probably witness it in other people besides yourself. It's easier to see it in other people. You see it in your kids or family members who just keep constantly going through the same hard time over and over and over again. Like whether it's a money challenge or whether it's a relationship challenge or they can't find the right person. It's like the same story over and over and over again with them. Why? Because they will not learn from the challenge. And one of the biggest reasons why they won't learn from the challenge is because they're stuck in victimhood. Oh, not me. And I see this in some of our family members who want to have a loving relationship with a spouse, husband, wife, whatever. But every single relationship they get into, they find something wrong with that person. And it's always a big drama, victim me, victim that, da. Every single person, something wrong with every single person, blah, blah, blah. But why can't I have this and why can't I have that? It's because you're not learning from those painful relationships that, you know what, maybe it's not everyone else. Maybe it's you, or maybe you're not accepting enough, or maybe you think there's a perfect person out there who has no flaws and that person doesn't exist, or whatever it may be. And I'm sure you listening to this too could see that in people around you. Like the ones that don't learn the lessons just repeat their circumstances over and over and over again. And for me, that's why I'm so grateful for the hard times, because I want to learn the lesson. I don't want to repeat these things over and over again. I had to do that multiple times. And even in this past launch, there were still lessons that I hadn't learned yet, which is like, just don't be lazy and repeat the same thing over and over again. It doesn't work out for you. And this is like my third time having to learn that lesson. And I'm like, okay, I got it. I'm not gonna be lazy with these launches anymore and just put my intention and my energy in evolving and doing the best that I can. But the point is number 4, I'm going back to is you asked for this. Whatever moment you're going through, you asked for it. And I'm sorry and actually, I'm not really that sorry, if I'm being fully honest, if that rubs you the wrong way or that triggers you. Grow up. You're an entrepreneur. There's going to be hard times. You're going to learn from them if you choose that. And if you don't, then that's on you. But you signed up for this. Be grateful for it, because the only thing that's going to come from it is growth, evolution, and getting everything you want. If you want to stay angry, you want to stay a victim, you want to be triggered, go ahead. It's not going to serve you. It means you're not learning your lessons. Okay. So, let's go back here. I have my notes here. When you set the intention of wanting something, you set a goal, or you say, this is what I want, or you have a vision of what you want to create, you have to understand what you're also saying is, help me become, to the universe or to God or whoever, help me become the person I need to become to have that thing. You have to understand anytime you set a goal, you set an intention, it's not going to be an easy path. And to be honest with you, you shouldn't want it to be an easy path, because when if something's come easy and they're just handed to you and all of a sudden you say, I want $1 million, you get $1 million, you actually don't even appreciate it the way you should. There's something so beautiful in wanting something and being an incredibly challenging path that when you finally get it, you have so much gratitude and love and appreciation for the thing that you have. Like the business that I have right now, the life that I have right now, I have gratitude every single fucking day for it, because it was really effing hard to get here. It was really difficult to get here. And I had to learn so many lessons to get here, but I wouldn't want it any other way. Because now that it's here, it's a huge amount of like proudness. I'm just so proud of what I've been able to get through and what I've been able to create. I'm so grateful and appreciative of it. I don't take it for granted. I'm thankful every day. And because the journey was hard, I'm filled with immense amounts of gratitude every single day. I am so grateful for those times that were hard. And I want to go through just a couple of them here so you guys understand, like, I look back and although these times were tough, I'm just so, like, it can make me cry. I'm so grateful for it. And this is exactly how I'm able to pull myself through, because I've been through so many like ups and downs in the business that when I go through one like this last one over the last 6 months, I'm like, it's just so easy to look at the positive. It's like, okay, this is going to lead us to a whole nother level. We're going to finally uncover things we didn't uncover. This is going to force us to do whatever. And like, this is what's necessary. Let's effing do it. Let's go. Let's go. And that's what we did. So, one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in this business journey was go $40,000 in debt. Like, I had success. We had a $500,000 a year business, and a lot of the money went to a business partner I had at the time, but still like doing pretty well. And, I was $40,000 in debt, got hit with a huge tax bill, but that was necessary because it taught me how to manage the money. Had I not learned those skills and then all of a sudden had $1 million business, guess what? That would have gone right out the window too. And you can't do that when you're like growing a business. When you're growing a team and you have budgets and you have salary and you have all of this stuff, you can't do that. And so it allowed me to manage the money. And so that's what the universe was saying, is like, you asked for $1 million business. Well, guess what? You don't have the money management skills to handle $1 million a year business. So we're going to throw this on your lap. Go learn it. If you're not going to learn it on your own, bam, here you go. Go learn it. And I was like, okay, I had to go learn it. It also taught me how to pivot. It taught me how to listen to what was in alignment with me, to understand when a pivot was going to happen. It allowed me to force me to give up a $500,000 a year business to pursue something that I love, which now allows me to be a better coach, a better mentor. It was like, cool, you want to be a mentor and actually help people? Bam, here's a situation you're going to have to go through, so you now know how to coach people out of it. It also allowed me to release the fear of money, because I had to hire someone when I was $40,000 in debt. It allowed me to be okay being in debt. It allowed me not to fear debt. In fact, I use debt right now to make money. And so it allowed me to have this understanding that like debt is just this fearful thing that we are told we shouldn't have since we're kids. And that if you have it, it's bad and blah, blah, blah. And it is. Different types of debt are different. Like if you have $50,000 of credit card debt because you spend too much, that's bad. You should probably get that looked at, right? But if you're putting $50,000 on a credit card for a launch, for ad spending, you know it's going to do well, that's not really that bad. And if you take on a mortgage, that's not really that bad, right? So like, perfect example, when we bought our house in 2019, we took out, we borrowed, I forget how much, 600,000, something like that to buy the house. So I technically had $700,000 in debt. But then COVID happened, prices went skyrocketing, and we made hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity off of it. And so I used debt in that case. Obviously, I had to put a little bit, I had to put some money down too. I didn't put 20% down, but I put a decent amount down. But debt allowed us to buy the house, which allowed us to make money. So I started to realize like debt could be your friend. And even if you are in credit card debt, like fear is not going to help you get out of it. Worrying is not going to help you get out of it. So I really learned how to release that. Another hard time was like having really bad employees who stuck around way longer than they should have. And I had to learn the lesson of tough conversations and firing, where now I'm like, again, it's one of those lessons. Hey, you want $1 million a year business. You can't treat employees the way you're treating them, which is like, in that case, was too good. It was like, let them do whatever they want all day long, even if they're not getting their stuff done. Keep them around. Like, I had to learn those lessons. You want $1 million business? You can't do that. So I learned how to have tough conversations. Now tough conversations are not that tough anymore. Firing is really easy. The other lesson that I had to learn too was like, when I was going through that first 9 months of like growing the business of the Video Forex, and we were going through that time, it was really tough. It was like, I was still in debt. I had to pay that off slowly. We had expenses creeping up. I was working day and night, and I was doing all that. I worked so hard, long hours, just to give the employees what I could give them, which back then wasn't a lot. I don't remember exactly what we paid people back then, but I remember like when we first brought on Spencer and Jackie and some other people, who are, for those who don't know, those are like our very first video editors who actually stayed with us for a while. And we brought in some other people as well, during that time. I was doing everything that I could to give them what I could. And I know it wasn't a lot, but it was all I could give. And even though I was giving them all I wanted, and I was working my ass off and working long hours and even sacrificing, the time with my kids and all of that stuff that was really important to me. And I was in debt at the same time because it took a while to pay off that debt. A couple months because we took off pretty quickly. But still, it was like maxing myself out energetically, time-wise, and then even financially to be able to give them those things. And we didn't have a problem with Spencer and Jackie at all. Like, I love them and they were great. And even Taylor is like maxing out what I could give her. But we did have issues with employees. And so what I realized was like, I thought we were a team and I thought we were all working really hard towards the same goal. And they, made the mistake of like thinking that they would care about our success as much as I did. And I realized that's not the case at all. Employees will never care about your business or your purpose or your mission as much as you do. You'll have some that are like, let's do this and like, let's roll up our sleeves and go, and we're like committed to this company. But at the same time, like, if I put it into perspective, if someone came to any one of my employees and offered them a $500,000 a year salary, they're not going to stay. Like, they're just not going to, they're not going to. And if someone came up to me and said, give up your business and I'll pay you $500,000 a year, my answer would be immediately no. I'm not going to do that, because this is what I'm passionate about, like getting a job. And if they came up to me like, you're gonna have to work 40 hours a week, you're gonna have to like vacation 2 weeks out of the year, $500,000 a year. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I want the freedom. I want to have unlimited amount of potential. I want to like, this is my mission. This is my dharma. I'm not giving that up for that amount of money. And so just even that right now, like, I think we have great employees, especially Matt, Brittany, Jackie, Jesse, like they're all great employees. And we have a great virtual assistant team that's been with us for a really long time, some of them. But the point I'm making is that they will never care about this business and this message as much as I do as the business owner. And I'm well aware of that. And that was an amazing lesson that I learned, because there were times where like some of the employees were literally like talking behind my back, spreading rumors around the company, like just like cancer and totally toxic. I remember one time an employee was screaming at Taylor, talking about like, I know how much you charge clients and you guys are underpaying us, but it's like, dude, you don't know what the payroll of the expenses are of everyone else. You don't know what our taxes are like. You don't know what the margins look like. You don't know how much money we had to spend in ads to get those clients. Like, you have no idea of any of the expenses, and you're screaming at our integrator, number 2, saying that you need to be paid more. And it's like, dude, we're working our effing ass off right now. Like, I'm giving up my time with my family and I'm doing all this stuff, and I went into debt, and this is like, yeah, we're making decent money, but it's like not real. And like, you don't know how much we're trying to put into savings so that if something does go bad, we can maintain your job, right? And we don't have to lay you off. And it's like all these things. And it's just started to realize like, wow, some of these people just really don't care at all. And it's just like, what do I get? What do I get? What do I get? And that's fine. You can never expect an employee to have as much compassion and care for your company and your message as you. But at the same time, it goes back to some of those lessons. That was a great lesson that I had to learn, but goes back to the other lesson I had to learn is like, you're going to have tough conversations. And when you find toxicity like that in clients or client, in employees, clients too, but in employees, it's time to like have that tough conversation and let them go and not wait around and not get into the fear, into the worry and all of that stuff. And so I had to learn those lessons as well. As like, it's just a job for employees. And in learning that lesson also, it also allows you to create as best of a work environment as you can. So for me, I'm like, I know that this is just a job for my employees. And so I'm like, I want to make it hard for them to leave to the best of my ability. So like, 2 weeks, last 2 weeks of every year, we give it to them completely paid time off. They have pretty much unlimited vacation time off as well. Raises every year. And there's more that I want to do that I just can't because we don't make enough to do that. But there's a lot. So I try to make it hard for them to want to leave because I also understand that this is just a job to them. I don't expect them to want to care about the business more than me. It doesn't make any sense, right? So it was a lesson that I had to learn. Another lesson that I had to learn is getting ripped off at a car dealership one time. I remember when I went in and bought a 4Runner, loved the car. I fell victim to all the freaking tricks that they pull. And then I get home and I'm like, well, I think I probably overpaid for that. And what happens with most people is they go like, this stupid dealership that screwed me over. It's like total victim mentality. Poor me and stupid victim. It's like, no, it was my fault for not educating myself on the pricing or how to negotiate or not having the personal power to negotiate or all of that stuff. It was my responsibility. And there's such a lack of responsibility in people sometimes that instead of going through that really hard time, I could have allowed it to go on and on and on and let it like kill my internal peace. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to learn from this. And if you guys have not listened to my negotiation episode, you should go listen to it. It's so good. And so what ended up happening is then over the next couple of years of when we started to buy new cars, I've negotiated over $100,000 off of cars that we've bought over the last couple of years, because of that one experience of getting completely ripped off. So because I chose to not get into victimhood, because I chose to be grateful for that experience, because I chose to learn from that experience, it now allowed me to save over $100,000 off of prices of cars that I've been able to negotiate down. Not only that, but negotiate off of jewelry and other things that we have bought and have well over $100,000 in savings because I chose to learn and to be grateful for that very unwanted experience and that unwanted experience in the moment. And again, I had to pull myself out of anger, pull myself out of victimhood. There was another time where I call it a mini canceling. There was a time during COVID when we held a mastermind and we had some, I think like 10 or so people there and we streamed the rest of it virtually. And someone got mad that me and James and Catherine and Jen Casey were not wearing masks and we didn't require the audience members to wear masks and started like tagging us and trying to cancel us. And I remember thinking in that moment, like looking at the person's business, I'm like, they don't have a very successful business. They don't have a very big following. If they treat this canceling of us as they do their business, we have nothing to worry about. We have nothing to worry about. There's another time when James and I had Local Video Academy and there was someone who started a YouTube channel called The Scammers of the Internet. And they featured James and I on their channel. And I remember James getting a little worried. And I remember sitting there telling him like, dude, I don't think we have anything to worry about, to be honest with you, because if we look at their channel has like 2 subscribers, no one's seeing it. And they're obviously, if they're spending their days bad talking and hating on people, they clearly don't have a successful business. And if they treat this channel as if they do their business, we have nothing to worry about. And sure enough, like we never heard from them again. We never saw them again. There was like 3 views on their videos. There's nothing to worry about. The person that canceled us, like we just blocked and deleted them and moved on with our life and nothing happened. There was like no repercussions at all. And so I started to realize like, you know what? No one can cancel you unless you cancel yourself. If you start to freak out and play in and bend and mold to what they're saying, and then yeah, your business is probably going to go down because you're losing your personal power and you're moving away from your actual message and dharma and alignment. So that was a great lesson. And it was kind of scary at first when we had to go through that and they're tagging us and wearing masks and telling us we're killing people because we didn't wear a mask and all this like nonsense. I started to realize like, wow, if this happened on a bigger scale, I wouldn't really care because what to me is more important is standing up for what I believe in and having a message worth standing up for and bringing in the right people that align with my message. And I'm not going to bend or alter what I am or who I am or what I say to the external world. And I started to realize that, you know what, no one can cancel you unless you cancel yourself. And so that was a great lesson as well. And then also with kids, like I would honestly say kids have been the best and the worst decision I've ever made in my life. And honestly, like, yeah, it's obviously going to be the best decision you ever make, but it's the worst decision you make because it just completely uproots your life from what you're used to. It takes away so much of your freedom. You're tired all the effing time. It's one of the hardest things that you'll ever do. But because of that, it's also taught me a love. I got to experience a love that I've never seen or experienced to the level that I do. It's taught me compassion for other people. It's made me a better mentor. It showed me my triggers and showed me how to overcome those triggers. And it showed me brought me so much awareness. It shows me how to get out of my perspective. And that's the best thing I've ever done as a parent, is to get out of my perspective and into my kids' perspective inside of conversations, or when I ask them to do something, or when they're mad, it's like always like, what is their perspective? What are they going through? How can I communicate to that? And that allows me to be a better marketer, allowed me to be a better parent, allowed me to be a better husband, allowed me to be a better leader. It also taught me how to be incredibly happy during really difficult emotional times. It showed me how to like calm my nervous system. The kids have been my biggest mentors, my biggest teachers on this planet, but also equally the hardest things that I've ever had to do. And so there are a lot of people that just get into the victimhood of being a parent. And like, I jokingly talk about it all the time. Like, I love having these conversations about how hard parenting is and how spoiled and ungrateful our kids are and all of that stuff. Like, I love joking around those sort of things. But when I'm seriously talking about it, is like, no, they are my biggest gift and hardest, but best thing. Even fights with my wife, unimaginable forms of growth when it comes to communication. Taylor quitting was like a very difficult and emotional time as well. Like, literally I cried during that experience, and that was really, really hard because she was like my right hand woman and partner. Like, she wasn't actually a partner in the business, but felt like my partner in crime. Like, we grew this whole thing together. And then quitting, that was like really tough emotionally. And she did everything inside the business. So it was really, really tough, but it also led to having the best launch that we've ever had, not because she was gone, but because it forced us to grow so much as a team. Where like Brittany stepped up to a whole nother level, like I've never seen before. Same with Matt and Julie. Like, they just totally stepped up to just unimaginable leaders within the team. And so although it was really hard, it led to really great things coming from it, and like, yeah, when Taylor quit, I was a little bit in anger and victimhood as well, but I pulled myself out of that and just had huge amounts of gratitude for what she had brought to the team, what she had helped me build over the years. And then even with what her quitting is allowing the team to do, allowed the team to grow. It allowed us to see and explore things that we never tried before. It allowed us just to do everything that we've done over the last 6 months. Again, failed launches have taught me various lessons on don't get comfortable. Don't just repeat things. Always reinvent. It allowed me to be tough, mentally tough. It allowed me to get out of arrogance. Every time I got into arrogance of like, we're going to crush it, we're going to do it, I've always had a really bad launch because I got lazy and I got arrogant. And that was never the energy that allowed me to be of service. And it never allowed me to have the greatest launches. And the thing is all these experiences that I've gone through all my life, they have molded me to be the person that I am today. Every single bad time has taught me some sort of lesson. Sometimes I had to go through it multiple times, but what it has done is molded me into exactly who I am today. And I love who I am today. I am proud of who I am today. I know that I'm not done. I know there's another version of me that's going to be even tougher and even stronger and even smarter and even better in a lot of different ways. But I love who I am today. And I love what all these lessons have taught me. And I am so grateful for all the bad times. So grateful that anytime in the future I go through a really tough time, I go immediately to thank you, universe, for this. Thank you for allowing me to grow. Help me see what I'm not seeing. Help me learn the lessons. And knowing that everything will be okay. And when I operate from that place, I become an incredibly powerful leader. And I become the person that I need to be to pull myself out of that. And I get myself out of anger. I get myself out of victimhood. Why me? Poor me. And I look for opportunity. I look for the lessons. I look for the growth. And I embrace it and I love it. And if you're going through hard times and unwanted times, emotionally distressful, do the best you can to pull yourself out of victimhood and pull yourself out of anger and put yourself into gratitude for that. Because I promise you, if you get stuck in victimhood, you get stuck in anger, you will be blind to the lessons. And the blinder you are to those lessons, the longer those moments will last. I can promise you that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Hopefully this is helpful for you guys to see and to hear. I would love to hear your biggest lessons from this. If you had any, and tag us at I am Brandon Lucero, or just send me a DM and let me know. And then again, as always, if you're a listener of the show and you have not left us a review on iTunes, I would absolutely love to see that review, to hear it. And you can go over to iTunes, leave us a review. I'd be so grateful for it. And thanks guys so much for this episode. I will talk to you in the next one. Take care. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.